It is not only our right, but it is our duty to hold those in power accountable. Justin Amash, former U.S. Representative for Michigan. All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Speaking of most objective libertarian, do you enjoy the show? Hey, guess what? Me too. Uh, be sure to help this channel grow. I want you to go, if you're watching from YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. If you're watching from Rumble, please give me a follow. And by the way, always accepting chatters in the live stream. So, throw a comment in there. Let me know what's going on. Give me your thoughts and opinions. We try to address them here on the show. If you're new, because I've gotten some new followers over on X, which you can watch the show on X too. There's not. I mean, you could just follow me there, and then you can comment from there. And then you can also follow me on Facebook if you're watching from there. But if you're new to the show, be sure to go check out past shows. I talk about a wide range of topics at the local, the state, and even the federal level. And it's not just here in Jacksonville and Florida either, right? Like I might talk about a bill over in Colorado or something that's going on in New York City or somewhere in middle America. Like it doesn't matter. In fact, I think if you dig back deep enough, you'll find that I've even reviewed some legislation from other countries. Not too often because, it doesn't really affect me too much. And then I also talk about, the culture war and, just kind of give you some insight into that. So all of that helps this channel grow and monetize, which allows me to keep producing a better and better show. Think of me as the libertarian Matt Walsh. Okay, you know what? Actually, I'm not sure if that actually hurts or helps, but if it helps, then think of me that way. If it doesn't, if it hurts, then don't think of me that way. Whichever one works. Speaking of the most objective libertarian, what's today's show about? Oh my goodness, Jacksonville City Council, they recently passed legislation that would prohibit taxpayer funding going towards services used by illegal immigrants. Now, you might say, well, that sounds pretty good, right? Like, what libertarian would oppose that? An objective one who reviews the bill and compares it against the facts. That's who. And that's what I'm doing. Today, I will probably make some people angry, but stick with me. And by the way, if you're listening and you do not live in Jacksonville, please listen anyway. Here's why. Things in Jacksonville are not that different than things in whatever city that you're living in, right? You probably have a city council. You may have a mayor. In our particular case, our city council is more heavily Republican. However, I believe the makeup is like they're not like the establishment Republican. That's like, there's like a mix. You've got some Republicans that will, vote party line and some of them that won't, or whatever. Right. So it's not just like, oh, one team versus the other team. And then we have a mayor who's a Democrat, right? You probably have something similar, uh, very similar. You might have a Republican mayor with a Republican, city council, whatever. And at the end of the day, you know, listening to the show about what's happening in Jacksonville gives you some insight into how to deal with your own city government. So even if you don't live in Jacksonville, this could be of value to you. And hopefully what I will do today is make it make sense. Kind of like that whole internet saying, right? So before we get into this, let's get a few easy objections out of the way, right? Let's just dispense with this. Okay, so here we go. Bam. Deal. You're just siding with the Democrats. Well, not so much. Check this out. I have quarreled with the local Democrat Party in the past to the point that their former party chair and the party blocked me and the local Libertarian Party on Facebook and on Twitter. Okay. So I am an equal opportunity offender, if you will. Like that's what it means to be objective. Right. So I don't just like one day I'll side with the Democrats, one day I won't, one day I'll side with the Republicans, one day I won't. That's how I operate. And by the way, since we're talking about parties here, if you think I'm tough with the Democrats and the Republicans, you ought to see how I deal with the libertarians. I'm not always friendly with them either. Okay, I live by that stated phrase, being the most objective. Okay, so what's another easy one here that we can get rid of? Uh, you love brown people. You're not America first. I've actually, you might be like, dude, what? We are talking about immigration. And when I talk about immigration on social media, I get that. I have had people, they're like, you need to leave this country, you and your wife. That's you know, a citizen, by the way, but she is from Indonesia. And so I've had to tell people, I'm because they're like, I've had comments where people are like, I bet you got a brown son, don't you? And I'm like, well, if we're using colors, yellow, technically. I'm just saying, like, if you want to come at me, get it right. I'm just saying, if you swing, don't miss. Okay. So, no, yellow, not brown. As far as America first, number one, because people like to say this, and I hate saying this, but it goes well. People like to hear it. I have served in the U.S. Army, and I was even deployed to a war zone. Okay. So I was prepared to not come back for my country. All right. So if you haven't served, if you had some bone spurs, you know who you are. Sit down. Okay. If you have served, then you know that you and I could have been on the front lines together. Okay. For America. We're not going to dive too deep into that comment, but you get my point. Right now, perhaps you could argue that DL isn't America first because I spend so much time talking about how I care about the truth and being objective. So maybe you might say, well, I'm truth first. Okay, fair enough. But I do believe that's an American value. And I think that's one that all Americans should want. Hey, you're objective, you care about the truth, you're going to dig in. And if the truth doesn't fit the narrative, you're going to call balls and strikes, right? America's favorite pastime, baseball. We're going to call the balls and strikes as they are. That's what I do. Um, here's another one. I haven't really gotten this one, but just we're trying to get some of the simple stuff out the way. You're being unfair to Council Member Diamond. Well, I've actually had him on the show before in support of legislation that he has put forward. So again, Mr. Objective here. And in fact, this show, me, has on more than one occasion taken aim at local politics, regardless of party. So let's take a look here. Um, you might remember back in episode 198, I dealt with the Israel Hamas resolution that was put forward by the Republicans of our city council at the time. I criticized that. I gave an objective evaluation of that particular resolution. That was in episode 198. Then you have episode 216, monuments and memorials, where we were taking down statues. I opposed that in mostly, and that one I criticized heavily Jimmy Peluso, who I believe is District 7. He is a Democrat. I criticized him relatively heavily over this one. Then you've got 364 bills and budgets. That one was where Rory Diamond came on the show, and I supported what he had to say. In fact, generally, I do support Rory Diamond because I very much appreciate the fact that he will vote no on many spending bills. And if you know libertarians, the easiest way to their heart is to say, I'm going to vote no on a spending bill. You don't even have to describe what the spending bill is. We're probably going to agree automatically. And then in episode 495, I discussed the landlord registry that was put forward by, again, Jimmy Peluso, Democrat, District 7 here in Jacksonville. So as you can see, I am indeed the most objective libertarian. Republican, Democrat, don't care. By the way, I just want to point out, I also extended an invite for Rory Diamond to come on the show this morning. I tagged him in a post that I made yesterday while he was actively tweeting in online, and presumably he saw it. I heard nothing. Crickets. Okay. Now, maybe he didn't see it, in fairness. Okay. Maybe he's got other things going on this morning, also in fairness. Okay. But he didn't reach out so far that I've heard. And I have told him in the past, I said, hey, anytime you want to come on the show, you're more than welcome. Just reach out and let me know. So he was invited. Now that we've got the simple stuff out of the way, we can start diving into this and see what in the world is going on here. Okay, so let's take a look at this first video. This kind of gives us a little bit of a summary because, if this is your first time listening, or like yesterday, I was actually interacting with somebody and they were like, hey, I'm new to the area. What's going on with this bill? And they're like, is it? And they were asking, they were like, hey, does this bill allow illegal things to happen? Is this going to become like, LA? I don't know if that's exactly what they said, but they were asking some questions. They were just unclear because they were like, hey, I just moved here. I don't know what's going on. So I gave them the lowdown and said, hey, check out my channel. I've talked about this before. And so for those viewers that might be tuning in and you may not be fully familiar with it, we are going to kind of walk through it. Okay. So so even if you know about it, just be patient and stay with me. All right. So here we go.
Tonight at 11, Mayor Donna Deegan pulling the plug on a controversial immigration bill, saying Jacksonville will never be a sanctuary city, and showing frustration with the measure at a news conference this afternoon. Even though Mayor Deegan used her veto power, City Council says this might not be the end of the bill that aims to block city funds from being used to support undocumented immigrants.
The measure has sparked much uproar across the Jacksonville community, and our viewers have been sending us dozens of messages, either praising Mayor Deegan for the veto or expressing frustration with the move. News for Jacksonville, Chris Will joining us live from City Hall.
Yeah, Chris, this bill brought by City Council member Rory Diamond, it was aimed at preventing funds from being used on those in the country illegally.
Yeah, in an effort to keep Jacksonville from being what he calls a sanctuary city, and as you mentioned,
Hey, news for Jax. Get that mic closer to your mouth. Just saying. You guys should be better at this than me. All right, carry on.
the mayor in her press conference today saying that will not happen and cannot happen here in Jacksonville, using her veto power for just the second time during her tenure.
I am pleasantly surprised.
Bad times have come.
And honestly, I'm really tired of talking about it.
The hot topic in City Hall, Mayor Donna Deegan's decision to veto 2025-0138, a bill introduced by Councilmember Rory Diamond to prohibit funding for unauthorized aliens, with some exceptions.
I stand for
We're going to talk about those exceptions, folks, because that's a critical component to this.
accountability, not scapegoating. I stand for transparency, not theatrics. And I stand for people, not politics.
The mayor hosting a press conference today to explain her decision. She says the bill duplicates existing state and federal laws and requirements, lacks a defined scope, and fails to quantify the problem it seeks to address. She also says it introduces legal exposure and that the city is already taking steps to ensure accountability and compliance.
This veto is not just a rejection of a bad bill.
Councilmember Diamond sharing in a statement that he plans to continue the fight for that bill.
And we have to say no. We have to push back.
The legislation returned to council tonight with a chance to override the mayor's decision.
By your action, we have not overrode the veto,
but fell just short.
Why am I here if I don't stand up for those values when I can?
And Diamond says the fight does not stop here.
No, I think the way we, present it is how we'll present it for the budget, which is, palatable to enough of my colleagues that will have 11 votes for the budget.
What Councilman Diamond is saying there is that they may try and have another go at this bill by putting it into budget legislation that would just need a simple majority for this to be passed. Yet again, Mayor Deegan was asked.
Okay, so he's not able to put that microphone up to his mouth so that we can actually hear him. But what he was trying to tell you is that in order that Councilmember Diamond's next move is to insert it into the budget, and that he believes that he has sufficient votes, which would be a simple majority. Because here's the catch. And I'll put this up on the screen for you guys so that you can see Where'd you go here? This one. Okay, so here is the override, the vote to override her veto, and you can see that it failed. An override veto. So look, your city council operates very much like your Congress and your president. You have to look it up. It may be, there are some where it's slightly different, but in Jacksonville, it operates the same. You have your mayor, which is the executive, similar to the president, who's the executive. Their job is to, oversee the functions of the city and manage the city. And then you have your legislative branch, which is at the federal level, it's your Congress. At your city level, it's going to be your city council. Okay. Again, depending on your setup, I think in most cases, that's going to be how it works. That's how it is here in Jacksonville. So in order to get a bill passed and to the mayor's desk, it has to have a simple majority. It passed, it got to the mayor's desk. She vetoed it. Then it goes back to city council, and they can override the veto, but they need a 2/3 vote. As you can see here, 8 yes, 7 no, 0 abstains. They did not have the veto votes. So therefore, Councilmember Diamond is like, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll insert this into a budget bill, because then it can get a simple majority. Okay. And so then basically we win anyway. Okay. So that's what the guy was trying to tell you, who is way away from the microphone. I'm sorry, I just can't get over that. That's not really the point of the show today. I should stop harassing News for Jacks, or maybe I shouldn't stop. Maybe I should just keep going. I don't know. Anyway, point being, that's the process that you have, and so you have to keep that in mind. Now, the Duval GOP, they put out a statement. And here is the statement, and I'm going to read it. It's on the screen. I know it's a little bit small, but it's hard for me to kind of like get all the text on there just so you can see it. But it says, today, Mayor Donna Deegan vetoed Ordinance 2025-0138, sponsored by Councilmember Rory Diamond and passed by the City Council, which aims to prohibit the use of city taxpayer dollars for services benefiting undocumented immigrants, with narrowly crafted exemptions for children, pregnant women, domestic violence survivors, military families, and essential medical care. We're going to talk about that here in a few moments. That's very important. Okay? So just keep that in your mind. We are proud of the work that Councilmember Diamond did to get this bill to the floor, and we stand firmly behind his hard work. We want Jacksonville to be put first, not illegal immigrants. Okay, that's not what's happening here. Okay, they're not putting anybody first. So we'll get to it. The veto is deeply disappointing. Really? She's a Democrat, you're a Republican. This kind of thing happens. I mean, you were surprised? Anyway. The ordinance, passed by an 11-7 vote in City Council, reflects the public's desire for transparency and fiscal accountability. All right, look, let me tell you something. I talked about this in my last episode, where I walked through the bill and we broke it down and I critiqued it, right? If you go back and you look at the election, Donna Deegan won her election against her Republican challenger with a greater margin than did Trump against Kamala Harris. So if you want to make the argument that, because a lot of people will say, oh, Trump's got a mandate, we got to do what Trump says. Fine. That applies locally as well. And so therefore, no, that doesn't necessarily represent, because the voters voted for a mayor as well. And our city government is set up with the same checks and balances and the same structure as you would expect out of Congress. That was on purpose. I talked about this yesterday, unrelated. I talked about this in yesterday when I was talking about the I'm drawing a blank here. I'm focused on this. But yesterday when I was talking about give me a second, let me look at it. The warmongers and criticizing the propaganda that was coming out yesterday. I talked about how the structure of government operates. You have to understand that in order to really look at this correctly and not be bamboozled by nonsense. All right, let's continue on. I don't want to get too dragged down in this. It requires the city to first report how much is spent locally on undocumented individuals before deciding whether those services should continue. Okay, so when you talk about the reporting, and I talked about this in episode 520, you can go back and look at it. I pointed out that the bill did two major things. Number one, it said, we need reporting on what's going on. Then it said, we need to stop this problem. Okay. I object to any legislation that cannot quantify the problem. You're not going to get me to support a bill when you come and say, oh my God, there's a problem. And I go, really? What kind of a problem? Well, there's a problem. Okay, but can you give me some numbers? Can you quantify this? Well, no, we need to look into that. Okay, so how do you know there's a problem? Like, how do you know there's a problem worth addressing? How do you know that this solution that you're providing really addresses that problem? Right? That's the issue here. Continuing on. Let's see. Instead of fulfilling that fundamental transparency, Mayor Deegan has halted the process, leaving taxpayers in the dark. They go on to say, hold on, let me switch over here to the next image here. Boom. All right, so there we go. They go on to say, a vote will be held tonight to override the veto. That one failed, but requires a yes vote of 2/3 of the council members present to pass. We need you to join us in supporting Council Member Rory Diamond and his bill. Contact your city council, your council member, and encourage them to vote yes on 2025 138. So clearly that failed. So now small government Republicans are going to insert this into a budget bill. Okay. All right. Just pointing that out there. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to, where else do we want to go with this? Oh, yes. So in that video we just saw, a lot of people had a lot to say. Well, as it turns out, a lot of people, my fellow Americans, I'm coming to you this morning to tell you that far too many of you are uninformed. I don't mean that to be harsh, but kind of. You guys are really uninformed. Let's take a look. So here is the Florida GOP. They put out a statement on social media. Mayor Deegan just vetoed a bill that would have stopped Jacksonville tax dollars from being used on illegal immigrants. She's siding with criminal migrants over Florida taxpayers. Okay, you're fear-mongering. By vetoing this bill, she is signaling to the entire country that Jacksonville is open for illegal immigration and that local tax dollars are up for grabs to support. It is simply outrageous. Okay, just GOP people. Tell me how many migrants are looking at cities and going, what services do they offer and how much and where can I get them? And then try to tell me that you, the person living here, active in your politics, cannot tell me and quantify a problem. Are you that retarded that you're going to tell me that illegal immigrants from some other country know better about services and money than you? Because that's what you're telling me. When you say that it's open for grabs, and you're saying that these criminal migrants now can be supported over Florida taxpayers, that assumes the underlying assumption is that they know about it and they know where to go and they know what services to get. But somehow you cannot. How does that work? Make that make sense. But here, let's talk about some of my fellow citizens. Here's some of the things that they said. You know what? I didn't. I should have had the music for this. Whatever. It's okay. Time for the governor to pay a visit. I'm sure the Duval County Sheriff is not very happy. What? What are you talking about? Why would the governor pay a visit? Are you suggesting that we no longer should adhere to home rule? Are you even familiar with home rule? That is where your local community gets to decide how they're being governed. So let me ask you, if Ron DeSantis was not governor, if we had a Democrat governor, are you all of a sudden cool with the Democrat governor coming in and saying, whoa, 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 we don't do that here?
We don't do that here in the state of Florida.
Is that what you're telling me? Are you telling me that you're okay with a Democrat governor coming in and dictating when the Republicans are doing something that he doesn't like? Because I'm not. I don't want the governor, whether they're Democrat or Republican, coming into Jacksonville and saying, this is how you run your city. I don't. I don't want the president doing it. I especially don't want the president doing it. Right? I mean, at least if it was the governor, it would be within the state. All right, let's go back to my images here because we got some more. Yeah. Mayor Deegan, you are America last, period. I don't know if you know this, Corey. I don't know if you're aware of this. We, the people, voted and she was elected to run Jacksonville. You can call it Duval if you want. Jacksonville. She's Jacksonville's mayor. She is not the president. Her job isn't to be America first, is to be Jacksonville first. And like I said, she won with a higher margin than did America first, Mr. Trump. So put that into your context. That doesn't even make sense. Democrat mayor. You can always depend on a Democrat to come solidly down on the wrong side of any issue. Okay, that's sure. You can have that argument. I think that's playing partisan, and you're not holding your local city, your local government or any government accountable when you're too busy playing party politics. Like I said, I don't care which party you're from. I'm going to read the bill, the legislation, whatever, the resolution. I'm going to read it. I'm going to make an evaluation based on my principles. My principles are not necessarily by the party. You should too. Here's one. Sandy Beach tagged Governor Ron DeSantis and Attorney General James Uthmeyer. What's the implication there? Again, do you want them to come in and just start dictating? Great. Don't bitch about it if and when we get a Democrat governor and they do the same thing, because that's exactly what you get. When you support your team doing something, you are effectively supporting the other team doing it when they get the power. Let's see what else we got. Again, tagging James Uthmeyer. Look at this. He doesn't need to look at it. It's none of his damn business. Freedom girl. Senator Rick Scott. He has even less to worry about. He is literally a Congress member supposed to be going to Congress and basically voting and debating and discussing issues on behalf of Florida. His job isn't to come down here to Jacksonville and dictate what Jacksonville's done. This is what I mean. Like, there's a lot of you that are uninformed or you just don't care. Either way, you're killing the republic. What did Ben Franklin say? Again, when he came out of the Constitutional Convention, and the woman, I never remember her name, but she was like, "What, sir, have you given us?" It was more like, "What, sir, have you?" I can't do it, but in a female voice, "What, sir, have you given us?" And he was like, "A republic, if you can keep it." You cannot keep your republic if you're busy calling for higher powers to demand and dictate when it's out of the scope of their power, their authority. You don't keep your republic like that. Let's see. Here again. And then they tagged ICE. Okay. I pointed this out in the past. Florida is the only state in the entire country that has an agreement with ICE. I believe it's a 287, 297G. I can't remember the exact numbers and letters, but it's something G. But it's an agreement that we will cooperate with ICE. We already have it. And it's already been in play. The news has talked about it. You don't have to tag ICE. They're already, quote unquote, welcome here in Jacksonville, and our sheriff's office will cooperate. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. Let's see. Mayor Deegan supports pedophiles and rapists. What are you talking about? What? Were you thrown on your head as a child? Or did you just bash your head against a concrete wall like yesterday? That doesn't even make any sense. Are you really telling me that every single illegal immigrant is a pedophile and rapist because they're getting a service from the city? You don't even deserve to vote. You really don't. This one's beautiful. Grok. They tagged Grok, the AI for Twitter, Was this bill specifically regarding tax dollars being used for illegal aliens, single issue bill, or were there other issues bundled? And if so, a summary of the other issues. When I said that you guys were uninformed, I meant it. If you have to ask Grok for a bill that you could have looked up, opened up, and read over lunch, this bill was actually small. You would know that had you read it. Or you could have at least watched some of the city council meetings. They talked about it. You had plenty of resources to inform yourself in real time while they were happening. You chose not to do it. Don't sit here and rely on Grok to give you all the answers, which, by the way, it gets wrong a fair amount of time. I like the AI, but doesn't always get things right. Say hello. We're going to get to this guy in a minute. Say hello to James Uthmeyer and Pam Bondi. So now we're mixing up authority because James Uthmeyer, he is our state attorney general. It's none of his business whether or not we're passing legislation, so long as our legislation isn't violating any laws, which it isn't. And Pam Bondi, she is at the federal level. So again, think back to the last president. Okay, all you Republicans, all you GOP folk, remember some of you who were like, oh, we shouldn't be locked down, blah, 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 right? So imagine if the Attorney General for the United States was coming to Florida and saying, you will be locked down. You don't get to go to church. You don't get to go to the grocery store. You don't get to go to Lowe's. You don't get to go to here. Is that what you want? Because that's what you're asking for. They are about to become major parts of your life very soon. No, they are not. And trust me, when I say that they will not be very cordial with you at all, they will be just as cordial as always because they're not going to be coming here. Nor should they be, as you, ma'am, have just violated federal law. Okay, which one? Name it and describe it, because you can't, because it didn't happen. But you know, let's go back to that. Hold on. Let's go back to that. Okay, so in addition to naming the federal law, if there was a federal law already in place, guess what you don't need? You do not need local city council passing legislation. You simply follow the law. It's not hard. Let's see. Lock her up and throw away the key. For what? For a veto? For doing her job? And when I say doing her job, a veto is within her power. Okay? City council can draft legislation. They send it to the mayor's desk. The mayor can evaluate it. She has one of three options. She can veto the bill, right? She can sign the bill, or she can basically ignore the bill. And the last two allow the bill to go into effect, right? So if you sign the bill, then it kind of it's basically saying, I agree with this. If you veto the bill, it's saying, I disagree with this. If you do nothing, it's kind of like dancing around it and like, I mean, some others might disagree, but this is where I see it. It's basically kind of saying like, I don't want to give a yes or a no. I'll just pretend like nothing, right? It's so in some ways it's kind of agreeing with it, but not really. You know, to me, that's just kind of pussyfooting around about it. But those are your three options, right? So she is not required by law to sign that bill. That's just absurd. Let's see what else we got. We're almost done, I promise. Let's see. Plenty of blue cities outside of Florida she can go to. Okay, sure, fair. I don't know what that has to do with anything. We voted against this kind of behavior in Florida. She needs to be voted out. Okay, no, you didn't. As I just pointed out, in fact, I'll even give you the numbers. Let me take a look here. Where are my numbers? Let's see. Donna Deegan won against Daniel Davis back in 2023, 52% to 47%. Okay, you can call it 48% if you want to round up. Okay, so 4-point spread. Donald Trump, he won 49%, 49.92% to 48.46%. So his margin of a win was less. Okay. Now I haven't looked up what Governor Ron DeSantis. I don't have that necessarily at my disposal. But again, you know, a lot of this is precipitated on the actions of Donald Trump. Okay. And we're going to talk about what Ron DeSantis has done here in just a moment anyway. All right, so let's see what else. Oh, okay. Again, we've got people, you know, reaching out to higher authority. Please come save us because you're our guys. And we don't want it to be when the other guys are in office, just our guys, because we don't understand how government works and how to govern ourselves for the people, by the people. F that. Let's just get authority whenever it suits us. Do something about this. No, they can't. We are not a sanctuary state, and no tax money should be spent on illegals. You are correct. We are not a sanctuary state. In fact, in 2021, Ron DeSantis signed legislation specifically prohibiting any government jurisdiction from becoming a sanctuary city. It's not even legal here. You can't do it. So everybody hand waving, going, "Oh my God, we might become a sanctuary city." No, we're not. We literally, legally cannot do it. You can't. And as far as I can tell, that's totally legal. Whether you like it or not, it is totally legal for a governor, right? In Colorado became a sanctuary state, right? Or was it a city? Let me see. Let me look at my notes here. Go back here. Where are you here? Yeah, Colorado became a sanctuary state in 2019. That was after the state passed HR 19-1124. Okay. Basically, when you go and you look at the legislation that makes a state or a city a sanctuary, all they really do is just say, we explicitly prohibit local law enforcement from cooperating with federal government. Well, because of the nature of our government, because of the Constitution, the federal government cannot compel any state or any city to actively participate with them. Like, they cannot do it. This is why when you see something like the federal government will go, "Man, be a shame if that funding for your roads dried up, huh? You better do this." Why do you think they're playing that game? Because that's the only leverage that they have. They cannot just say, "We passed this. We're sending our law enforcement in. You have to work with them." They don't. Now, what we cannot do is we cannot obstruct them, right? We cannot actively obstruct them, but we don't have to work with them. We could just be like, "Look, figure it out yourself. We're not going to get in your way, but you figure it out." That is federal law, right? I believe it's in our Constitution. I might be a little bit off on that one, but federally, we are not required to cooperate. We are only required to not interfere. So therefore, states and cities can pass legislation that either say local law enforcement will explicitly work with federal law enforcement, or they can pass it and say you explicitly are prohibited from doing so. That's how you become a sanctuary state or city. So be informed, folks. What else we got here? Got a couple more. So this one, I said we're going to come back to one. I said yesterday, I'll be discussing why Mayor Deegan's veto was the correct decision on tomorrow's show. As always, and you can see here, Roy Diamond is welcome to join me and defend. I did not hear from him again. We're going to be fair. Maybe he was busy, and he just didn't see it. Maybe he had some other obligations this morning, right? Maybe he didn't really see a need to come on my show. Whatever. There's any number of legitimate reasons why he is not here defending his bill. Okay. So I'm not trashing him for not being on the show. Okay. But I did offer him because I'm the most objective libertarian that you will find. Okay. But here we go. Then this Pistol Pete fella, whoever you are, correct how? I'm telling you right now, this whole show, and you can go back and you can watch the in-depth dive that I did on the actual bill itself back in episode, I think it was 520. Is it correct based upon you and many others' liberal viewpoints regarding the treatment of human beings? No. Number one, I'm not even liberal. Okay. Like I see a friend of mine, Jimmy, in the chat. Him and I debated pretty harshly, at least on my end. I was probably a lot meaner than he was, back in 2017 on expanding the human rights ordinance. And I said, I just don't think there's a need for it. And I objected to it. And I said, no, right? That bill, as far as I was concerned, was all about a liberal viewpoint on the treatment of human beings. And I said, I don't think there's a need here. You can argue with me and say, yes, there was, whatever. It's a done deal now. But no, I'm not a liberal. I am a libertarian. I know the LIB confuses people, but there is a distinct difference. Maybe. I'll give you that maybe. But legally, not a chance. Incorrect. It is in violation of both Florida statutes and federal statutes and opens up the city to litigation. Now, I can't speak to whether it opens up the city to litigation, okay, unless we're talking about saying hospitals cannot fund illegal immigrants because hospitals have a higher directive that if somebody comes in and they're practically on death's door, they have to treat them, right? And that exemption was made for that exact reason, okay? Then he came back and he said, invite me. I'll rip you apart with legal facts. Well, first of all, you should have put them, when you were chatting me up, you should have put them in there so that I could review them, right? What in legal terms, what's that called? Discovery? You should have gave me some discovery on the lay level, not emotions on why it was incorrect. Good luck finding an emotion here, other than the way that I deliver the show. I'm not giving my opinion, my perspective on emotion. I'm giving it on fact. I'll be cordial. That's cool. I appreciate that. But brutal and ruthless. Well, you're welcome to try, but I don't invite people on this show that I don't even know who you are. Just some rando on the internet. No, you got to show a name, a face, do something a little bit more than that, because you are so in the wrong. No, I'm not. And you will see that this veto, nothing will happen to Donna Deegan other than what voters may do, but nothing legally will happen to her, right? Nobody's going to come down and say, oh, James Uthmeyer, Ron DeSantis, nobody's going to come down and say, you shouldn't have vetoed that. We're locking you up. We're throwing away the key. None of that's going to happen. Not going to happen, right? Not from the federal level, not from the state level. It's not going to happen. Why? Because she didn't violate any laws. For starters, she just vetoed legislation. So if there was a problem that violates federal or state statute, it was already pre-existing. So you should go after those people. But you're not. Okay? You're not talking about whoever set this system up so that it could happen in the first place. Go after them if it's such a big deal. But you're not, because you can't, because it's not true. Better put your big boy pants on. I wear my big boy pants right here. Okay? Okay? All right. I'm getting a little I'm really having fun. I'm not really all that angry. Just getting a little amped up here for the fun of it. Don't mind me. Okay. So that's some of the comments. And, again, to get back to this, I feel like a lot of my fellow Americans are just uninformed. They're uninformed about the nature of our government. They're uninformed about the laws. And most importantly, they're uninformed what this legislation says, what it does, and how to question it. And that does kind of bother me. That's why I do this show. Every Monday, I review a bill. I've reviewed, somewhere over 100 bills through the course of this show from all over the United States and even some outside of the United States, right? And do I get them always correct? No, I'm not a lawyer, right? Sometimes maybe I get it wrong. However, from what I can tell and just looking back, I've got quite a good track record. So pat myself on the back. All right, good job, DL. Okay, so let me get to some comments here. And then we're going to go to break, and then we're going to come back. And what I want to do is, after the break, I'm going to walk through Donna Deegan's press conference from yesterday. So let's check out some of the comments. By the way, if you are giving me a comment on either on X or on Facebook, I cannot show it on the screen, so I will have to just say it. So Jimmy says, I'm not so sure that will work in the budget. We'll have to see what Councilmember Diamond has in mind. I don't know. Again, we'll have to see. What does it look like when it comes in the budget? How it's going to work? I don't know. So I agree, Jimmy. We will have to wait and see how that plays out. I don't see any comments here on Facebook, but let's get to let's get to the chat here where I can put things on the screen. Justin Amash is legit. He absolutely is. Also, he's a real lawyer. So when he speaks, there's a little bit more authority behind what he has to say. Here's DL's Rumble. You can go to rumble.com/C/Liberty Dad, all one word. Go there, give me a follow, watch some of the shows. It'll help out the channel. I appreciate it so much. And you'll get more of the objective Liberty Dad, as we move forward. Let's see. That Liberty Lady says, pretty sure I'm blocked from both local Jacks, GOP, and Duval Dems. Tends to happen to us libertarians, not liberals. Let's see here. We got a comment from Jimmy here in the chat that I can put on the screen. LOL at Duval Rec. So much spin, I'm getting dizzy. Sometimes that's the way it is. And when there's spin, whether it's from the Democrats or the Republicans, you can be assured that I will call it out. That's why I don't have very many friends. Let's see here. Let's see. Yes, home rule is the best rule. Government closest to the people is often the most effective. I absolutely agree. And with very, very rare exception, will I say home rule, I overrule home rule. It's almost always going to be in the context of my understanding of the Constitution of the United States or some inherent natural right, which generally means it's going to be the Constitution of the United States. Like very rarely am I going to say, I'm not going to rule it out entirely, but like if you see a dispute between a local community and either the state or federal, it's usually the state issue. You can probably guess without even looking at it that I'll probably side with home rule. That because let me give you a story. I used to mentor a kid here in Jacksonville, good kid, through a local organization called Daniel Kids. And he was telling me about a prior mentor who was trying to pay his mother to vote for Mitt Romney. I know, right? Pay it. Like, aside from the legality issue of that, I had a fit because here was the problem with it. I said, okay, you pay somebody to vote for the guy or gal you want. Cool. Not cool, but you follow me. And so then they do. But then let's say that person gets into office and then they renege on their promises. Well, guess what? That person, they just made a transaction, right? They just voted for somebody for some money. So therefore, they had no vested interest in keeping that person accountable for what they promised that they were going to do. So now one of those people that helped get them into office is now either not going to hold them accountable or only hold them accountable if you paid them more money. Okay. This same issue arises, I think, further away from the people that you get, right? People have more of a vested interest locally to keep their city council and their, mayor and whomever else accountable than they do their state reps, than they do Congress. Why? Because you have easier access to them. Think about it. If you don't like anything that the city council members are doing, right? Anything, like it doesn't matter whether it's right or left, GOP or Democrat, right? You can go to city council twice a month on Tuesday night, and you can yell at them. You can send them emails, but more importantly, you can go there and look them right in the eye. And you can say, no, I don't like this. It's a lot harder to do that with your state reps and your federal reps, right? So yes, I absolutely believe that home rule is the best. Let's see. Exactly right here. That Liberty lady. Yeah, government closest to the people erodes your liberties way more than the clowns show in Washington. What your mayor and city council does is way more important than anything national. For the most part, yes. I mean, there are some issues where what they do locally is not nearly as important, like, when it comes to immigration and stuff like that. What national does is more important, defense of a country, so on and so forth. But your day-to-day life is more important. And how many times have you been like, man, I would love to build this thing on my property, but I got to go get permission or whatever, right? Like that happens all the time. Hold them accountable. Let's see what else. DL getting rowdy. Like if I didn't get a little rowdy, the show might be boring, but I'm really not angry. Promise you I'm not angry, folks. All right, let's go to break. We'll be right back. And then we will dive a little bit more into this. So see you in a moment. Hey, Liberty fam, do me a favor. If you enjoy the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. By the way, if you want to support the show, head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage supporters of the show. We'll discuss topics that you want me to talk about, response videos that you would like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads. All right, let's get back to the show. Okay, so we're back and we're going to dive into this now a little bit more. First, let's start out with this video here. It's like a 1-minute clip This has Rory Diamond talking a little bit more about it.
All new
So,
at 6.
ooh,
A
that's loud.
controversial immigration bill passed by Jacksonville City Council is now on the mayor's desk, and pressure is building. The measure would block city funds from being used to support undocumented immigrants. News for Jax reporter Yvette Sanchez is the latest on the debate and the demands being made of Mayor.
Okay, did they do that on purpose? Sanchez? I'm just saying. It's a little funny. Maybe they're trolling us. I don't know.
Donna Deegan.
A split Jacksonville City Council has passed a controversial ordinance blocking city funds from going to services for undocumented immigrants.
See, you guys could have read all that. There was no reason for anybody to be uninformed. You could have read all of that. Super easy.
The measure passed in an 11-7 vote after hours of debate and 5 last-minute amendments.
It's a really simple bill. It says we need to first know how much money we're spending on illegal aliens in Jacksonville. And
Okay, right there. It's exactly what I'm saying. How much are we even spending? We've had all this debate. I'm now on my second show. We don't even know how much is actually being spent. Like, what if the amount that's actually being spent is very trivial and we could look at, waste or whatever elsewhere, and that would be a better use of our time? But we don't know, because the bill's author, and again, I don't begrudge him necessarily. I support some of his votes, a lot of his votes. Anytime you vote no on spending, I'm probably going to support it. It's like, the way to a man's heart is through food. The way to a libertarian's heart is to stop spending money and give taxpayers back their money. It's pretty simple.
And 2, it prohibits using taxpayer funding for programs for people who are in the city illegally.
Okay. How many people are here illegally? Do we know? No, we don't. But we have a city of what, 1 million? So are there 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, few hundred? We don't know. Then on top of that, how much of the services are they actually using? We don't know. How can you solve a problem when you don't know the scope of a problem? And I get it. On the surface, it sounds nice. Like, hey, they shouldn't be getting money anyway, so let's just stop it. And I get that. But we're going to get into some things.
It also includes exceptions for children, pregnant women, domestic violence survivors, and military families.
Okay, so let's pause for a moment. Let me think. Children, pregnant women, domestic violence survivors, and then military families. Now, we can rule out military families as being here illegally. Okay, pretty much. Like, I'm pretty positive that you're not going to find, like, if you were to find somebody that's here illegally, like maybe you have a service member that's, living with an illegal immigrant. Well, okay, you might have something, but that number, I think we can all agree, is probably going to be infinitesimally small, like tiny. So we don't have to worry about that. So now you have children, pregnant women, domestic violence survivors, right? And they actually have some more. So let me let me take a look here at this image. This one lays it out a little bit better. So the exemptions: UF Shands, a hospital. Okay, then you've got services for labor and sex trafficking victims, children, pregnant women, active military members. Okay, so this graphic here includes UF Shands. So now ask yourself, okay, let's just say that we have 500 illegal immigrants here in Jacksonville. How many of those are using UF Shands? How many of them are labor and sex trafficking victims? How many are children? How many are pregnant women? How many of these, like, we've exempted people? How many of the exemptions apply to the illegal immigrants? Okay. And these are reasonable exemptions. Like, I don't have any issue. Like, you kind of have to do UF Shands because they're required by law to treat people. So, and part of the argument, if you watch the Rules Committee video, they brought up the point. They said, we should not pass legislation that's going to potentially put UF Shands in a bind where they have to either follow one law or the other, breaking one of them, right? And that's fair. That's reasonable, okay? And the law that requires them to treat people is higher than the city statute. So it's not like the city can be like, well, we're just going to pull that. We're going to amend that so that it no longer applies to. No, they can't do it. So they have to abide by the higher law. Okay, so it makes sense. But how many illegal immigrants are getting services through that. All right. How many illegal immigrants are getting services because they're a labor or a sex trafficking victim? Right. These would presumably be children, but not always. You know, like there'll likely be some women in there as well, some younger women more than likely. Okay. And then you have children, then you have pregnant women. Okay. Well, once you exempt all of these, what exactly is left? So you have 500. Let's just say that. Let's just make up a number. Let's say 400 fall into one of these categories. Okay, so now that 400 is getting taxpayer money, and then we have 100 that are not, or that are not. They're not eligible for it anymore. We're having this big, huge fight. We're talking about, oh my God, we're going to be a sanctuary city, which we're not. We're fear mongering. We're scaring everybody into this problem for 100 people. And again, the 100 is a made up number. I don't know. Nobody knows. It could be 1,000. It could be 10,000. I suspect it's not anywhere close to 10,000, but it could be. We don't know. That is the information that we should have. When we pass legislation, we should always know what is the scope of the problem, right? Because then you can evaluate what? If you said we can evaluate whether or not, in the future, whether or not that legislation passed was effective because we knew the numbers and we had all the data to work with up front, please go to the head of the class because you are correct. When I object to this, I'm not objecting to it because I'm some bleeding heart liberal. I'm objecting to it because I don't know what problem we're going to solve, and I will not be able to tell you later how effective it really is. Because you're going to go and get legislation, you're going to go and get reports that say, here's the scope of the problem. And if it comes back that the scope of the problem wasn't that big deal, then we've had all this fight and we've taken our attention and put it towards something that's a tiny little problem. Now, it could work out that we could find out that is a big, huge problem and we can save the taxpayers a lot of money, right? But it could go in any number of ways. I don't do legislation like that because the number one problem that I have with any legislation is that legislation will claim it's going to do something and then not do it. And in many cases, it actually does the opposite. So think back. I'll give you a good example. You want to talk liberal? California recently, they a study came out and said California spent $24 billion to deal with the homelessness problem in California. However, nobody could account for where that $24 billion went because they stopped monitoring it. So they had $24 billion that they spent. Now you might say, well, they spent so much money, they probably dealt with the problem, right? Nope. The problem got worse. It increased by 50%. That's what happens when you put the cart before the horse. So and if you look back at episode 520, I said the first thing we should do is do reporting. I'm always supportive of getting transparency and getting reports and putting information out to the people. You will never hear me object to the government taking and collecting information and handing it to the people. I will never object to that. I will always support that. Then, and then only, we can figure out, okay, what do we need to do about the problem? Because imagine, let's go back to my image really quickly. Imagine that we did our reporting. And then we found out that, hey, the greater share of immigrants using services in this city is at UF Shands. Now what? What's your answer then? How do you deal with it? You can't just tell UF Shands to not treat them, right? Because that would be breaking the law, a higher law. So you have to find out a different solution. This is my problem. This is why I object to these bills. We need facts first. Then we can identify a solution. You do not identify a solution for a problem that you have not quantified and you know nothing about. And I'm going to tell you, watch the Rules Committee. Go back and watch it. Mr. Diamond himself, Councilmember Diamond himself said, we don't know. In fact, he just said in the video we watched. Let's continue watching that video. Let's see here.
If the mayor signs the bill, it'll be a clear message that Jacksonville will never be a sanctuary city, and it will protect taxpayer dollars, and it will protect people who are here illegally who need services.
Okay. No. Incorrect. It is not sending a signal that we will never be a sanctuary city, because we legally cannot be a sanctuary city. In 2021, again, Ron DeSantis signed legislation saying you cannot be a sanctuary city. And remember the comment where they were like, I'm sure the sheriff is angry. The sheriff and the past sheriff have worked with ICE already. You don't need to tag them. They're already working with them. We literally have an agreement. I believe it's a 287G. We have an agreement. And there's a map. I believe ABC News put it out. You can go look it up. You can go find it. This map shows you all of the counties in the United States that have an agreement with ICE. And you'll see that Florida is like lit up like a Christmas tree because every one of their counties has some sort of agreement. And they're mostly the same, but not all the same. They all have an agreement to work with ICE. And then you have other states and cities where it's very sparse. Like there's not another state that comes even close to us. Like it or not, that's just a fact. Okay? So we're already working with ICE. We're already cooperating with them. And you can go back and do a Google search. You will find that there are instances where the news has reported that the sheriff's office has worked with ICE to make a bust on some illegal immigrants for doing something, right? This crazy murder or whatever, right? They've been working with ICE. It's been reported. So this is not even like we have an agreement, we're just not doing it. Nope, we're actively doing it. Okay. Then we have legislation that overrides the city, for better or for worse. It says you cannot be a sanctuary city. Okay. So we can't be. So there's no signal being sent. We literally cannot be one. So we need to stop fear mongering and telling all of our citizens, oh, we're at risk of it. All right. Got to hurry up here.
If the mayor doesn't sign it, then she's putting a big welcome to Jacksonville. We're a sanctuary city. Come here, you get free services, and there's no consequences for not following the law.
Okay. There's no consequences. What did I just say? 287G, sheriff's office already working. There are consequences right now. You can go find them, right? You can go look it up and you can see that there have been consequences. He is not telling you the truth. Whether he doesn't know it, whether he's lying, I don't know, that's a decision for somebody else to make. Okay. But that is not accurate. Period. That is a fact. It's not my feelings. It's not my fifis. Okay. It's not my liberal bleeding heart that I don't have in the first place. I tell people, I'm like, I have a tiny little black heart. Okay. So keep that in mind. Let's continue.
Breaking the law.
The bill sparked protests and drew extensive public comment, with most speakers opposing the measure. Some believed it would.
That's weird. Remember what that Liberty lady said? Like, local and, closest. Look at all these people. You can literally go to your city council and say, hey, this is how I feel about things, and let them know. And you can send them emails. You can protest. And I support everything. You want to have a big protest? You want to have a march in our city? And the Republicans might scoff at you and go, oh, you did right. I don't care what they say. I support your right to raise your voice as loud as you can. Don't riot. Don't damage property. Don't harm people. But man, if you want to raise your voice, I don't care it doesn't matter whether I agree with you or not. I will support you 100%.
Do more harm than good. Others called for the council to focus instead on affordable housing and infrastructure improvements. Councilman Rory Diamond says the ordinance is about accountability, not targeting immigrants.
The mayor knows exactly what she's going to do, but she's trying to, hope that we all don't pay attention, but we're paying attention.
In Jacksonville.
Okay. So I will end on a positive note here. So the last, week or so, he kept posting this little graphic and he was like, 8 days left, 7 days left for the mayor. I can appreciate that. I like that. If city council passes legislation and they want, and we know it's controversial and we know that the mayor may not sign it, I think it's a good thing for our city council members to, on behalf of their constituents, to say, hey, we passed this legislation. We want an answer from our mayor, right? Do it quickly, hurry it up, keep talking about it so that your citizens, not your citizens, but your constituents, the citizens of Jacksonville, keep that fresh in their mind, and then they can make a decision and they can email the mayor and they can say, hey, do this or don't do this, right? I support all of that. So I can appreciate the fact that he didn't want to let it go. Now, would she have would she have necessarily signed it in quiet? Perhaps not. because a lot of people were talking about it. It was a big deal. Okay. And that's a good thing. Regardless of where you stand on the issue, I want you talking about it. That is the point. It would be absurd for me to say home rule is a big deal and then to turn around and squawk because everybody's raising their voice. No, please raise your voice. Tweet the hell out of a topic, right? Email your your council member, right? Your Congress members too, but email your council members. Let them know. Read the bills. Watch this show when I do a bill review, right? Watch. I know they're kind of boring. At least watch the portions that are relevant for for the city council meetings. I mean, some of them are kind of boring, and I get it; they're not really too relevant to you. But when there's a topic like this, watch that portion of it. See what they're saying. Say, I agree. I don't agree. Right? Reach out to your council member and say, hey, you said this in this committee meeting or in city council meeting, and I think you're wrong, or I think you're right. Do that. I appreciate it. I support it 100%. All right, let's get into Mayor's. Let's walk through what she had to say, and I appreciate that she held a press conference, laying out her issues and why she did what she did. I think this is a good thing, and we should expect this. This should be the default for any one of our elected representatives, especially when there's a big issue, like if there's an issue where people are talking about it a lot. You should get out in front of the people and you should be straightforward and say, I am signing this. I'm not signing this. Here's why. So let's take a listen.
During the
Ooh,
city
that's
council
loud.
debate on a controversial immigration bill, a simple question was asked. Who does this bill help? No one answered.
I mean, that is either factually true or factually not true. You can go back and you can watch the video. They're all recorded. I wish our city council would use YouTube or somewhere else better, but whatever. They're using what they use. But you can go back and you can look them up and you can see, was that question asked? Did anybody answer it? That's a good question. Who does it help? Here's one of my problems when we say, oh, we're not going to spend this money. We're going to stop spending this money on this thing because it's a bad idea. They often don't give that money back. They often don't say, okay, we're not going to spend this money on this thing. We're going to save some, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And therefore, we can reduce the tax load on the taxpayers. This is another problem that I have with these kind of bills in this legislation, because it's like, okay, what good does it do if you say we're not going to spend this, $1 million here on this thing that the citizens don't want, but we're going to spend it, we're going to shift that money to something else that the citizens also might not want. Because you know what I want? I want my money back. How about that? Stop taking my money. What did I say? Libertarians, the best way to their heart is to stop stealing their money. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Taxation is theft. Let's continue.
Not the bill's sponsor, not its supporters. The silence was telling because the answer indeed is no one.
Okay, I'm going to disagree. Just because somebody didn't answer doesn't mean that it's no one. That just means they didn't have the answer. Why? Well, because we haven't done the work. We haven't done the footwork to go out and see what is the scope. Is there a problem? What's the scope of it? Where are these funds being utilized? We don't know. So in that sense, I actually disagree with her. I think she's incorrect. I could see where she would make that comment, but the truth is we don't know.
This bill does not help our taxpayers. It doesn't help our healthcare workers, our nonprofits, our first responders, or our neighborhoods. This bill is not rooted in the common good. It is political theater disguised as fiscal oversight.
Boom. I actually agree with that. I think it is political theater disguised as fiscal oversight. Because again, it's not fiscal oversight if you don't even know what the problem is in the first place. You got to go and find the problem. Like, think about Doge, right? We didn't say, hey, we got to stop spending money on this, while Doge is going digging to find out what the scope of the problem is. No, we said, all right, go dig and come back to us. And then, of course, in that particular case, the Republican Congress, by the way, they just said, let's just pass some legislation and fund all this stuff anyway. I mean, that's a different scope, right? That's federal, not local, but it is the same party. So all you people out there like, oh, Democrats, maybe look in your own house. Let's continue.
Most importantly, this bill puts our city's legal standing, public safety, public health, and economy in jeopardy. Here are all the reasons.
Okay, so I don't know how it puts us in jeopardy. I just think that it doesn't really do anything yet. There's no guarantee. There's no, we're going to pass this bill because we're spending so much money. We're going to stop spending so much money. And then we will have this money freed up so that we can spend it here and do this other thing that citizens can decide whether or not they want. Or, hey, we're going to free up this money and we're going to give it back to citizens so that you guys can buy an extra loaf of bread. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I agree there necessarily, but so there's some element. Ultimately, I agree with the veto, but I don't necessarily agree with all of the reasons.
Reasons why I am vetoing Ordinance 2025-138-E. First, it creates legal risk and makes our city a target for constitutional challenges and costly lawsuits.
Okay, maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm going to say it's probably not true. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know the constitutional point for which this could be a problem. Okay, because I don't know that there's anything in the Constitution that says an illegal immigrant is supposed to get funding from your local government. Right now, perhaps they're talking about, like, in the Constitution, there is a distinction between people and citizen. But if that's the issue, then clarify that. And I realize that this is like a 7-minute conversation. She's not going to go into and break it down entirely. But some of the others that object to it, some of the members of city council that object to it, they should come out and they should say, hey, let's do a little bit more deep dive into this. And let's explain why we believe that this could be a constitutional problem. Like, somebody should come out and say that, right? I get it. You're not going to get everything out of a press conference.
Immigration is the domain of the federal government, not local government.
She is correct. Let's give her a little pass on that.
Yet here we are, facing another bill that takes Jacksonville way out of our lane. This bill places us in the difficult position of asking healthcare providers and nonprofits to determine immigration status, which is neither their role nor their expertise.
Okay, so kind of right. Okay, let's make a distinction. If you come into the hospital, you got like a bullet wound, they're going to treat you. They don't have to ask about your immigration status, presumably. Okay, but if you come to an entity, a healthcare service, and it's not a bullet wound, and you come in there and you're getting a service, that's being paid for by the taxpayers, and it's not an emergency, well, then yes, they would need to say, okay, show us your papers, please. Okay, and is that their responsibility? No, it's not. Like, I want our healthcare workers to do healthcare stuff, right? And they only need to get the actual information from an individual in order to do their job. That's it. They should not be like, oh, this is the same. Okay, if Republicans, if you're having trouble understanding this, if it is not making sense to you, let me put it in a different context. When I take my son, who's 6, to the pediatrician, it's none of her business, nor should she be asking if I have a firearm in my house. That is not her job. That is not relevant to her determining whether or not my son has, the flu or some other sickness, right? Or what treatment he needs. Not relevant. Okay? So hopefully that makes the point. Hopefully you understand it now. Right? We want healthcare people doing healthcare stuff as it's needed to treat people. Nothing more. Focus on your job. That's it.
The bill also creates a discriminatory scenario where a person may be able to access services at one institution, but not another. Imagine being able to receive services at one hospital, but being turned away at another down the road.
Okay. This is kind of a problem. And the reason is, when it's a private entity, they can discriminate. And when I say can, I mean as far as a libertarian is concerned. So if a hospital was completely private, taking no funding, in a libertarian world, they could say, you're not going to like this. They could say, you're a brown person or a yellow person. You're not a white person. We're not servicing you. Now, I know, like, all the Dems and all the liberals are like, what? I can't believe you said that. Maybe some of you GOP folk too. I told you, I'm objective. I'm a libertarian. I'm not a liberal. Okay. But when it comes to the government, they should not be discriminating. We should not create situations where there's discrimination in one aspect, but not in another, right? That should be unacceptable. We fought that fight already. Let's move on from that.
Second, this ordinance compromises public health and public safety. Nearly 120,000 Jacksonville residents are foreign born. Most of them are naturalized citizens.
Okay. This is the first time that somebody has put a number. Now, it doesn't tell you the scope of the problem, but she said 120,000 people are foreign born, including my wife, by the way. And if you're going to come at me, just remember yellow, not brown, right? Try to get it right. Okay. I'm trying to help you out. Okay. So 120,000. Out of that 120,000, how many are not naturalized, which means they're not citizens? How many are not citizens? How many are illegal? That's a different number, right? Because you've got foreign born, 120,000. Then you have some that are naturalized, so they're a citizen. We can set them aside. Then you're going to have some that might be here legally, right? They're here on visa. Maybe they're a student. Maybe they're here on a work visa. And then you're going to have some that are undocumented. They're not here legally in some way, right? We don't know those numbers. That breakdown has not been given to us.
This bill, in the guise of targeting undocumented immigrants, stokes fear and casts a shadow of suspicion over all immigrants.
Okay. She's correct. In several episodes in the past, I have said, when we look at what the government is doing, we should, and specifically with the immigration, we should say, what kind of society do we want? Focus on that. Most Americans, I believe, when I talk to them, if I said, do you want an America where people come here, they work hard, they pay their taxes, even though taxation is theft, but they pay their taxes, right? They don't steal and rob. Maybe they complain and do something, complain about the government like you do. They complain about the mechanic overcharging them, whatever, right? But they otherwise are good people. They watch out for your house when you're on vacation and they let you know if somebody was prowling around. Maybe they call the police. Is that what you want? Most people would say, yeah, that's absolutely what I want. You don't get that when you start making everybody afraid of where we're going to go next. When we start saying, papers, please, are you really an immigrant that's here legally, or are you one here that's illegal? When we start doing that, you get people to be silent. They don't want to participate, right? Because look, I don't want people assuming something about me. Anything. I don't want you assuming that I'm a liberal, only because I'm not. I have no issues with liberal other than some of their terrible ideas, but that's not who I am. I don't want you to assume that I'm some sort of danger to your children because I'm a man, right? And many men in this country, they know if they were to stop and watch children play at a park and just go, wow, that's such a nice scene. People might be like, wait, what are you doing? Why are you looking at my children? Do I need to fight you? Right? What kind of society do you want? And this applies to everybody, right? Yes, we may not want people that come here illegally. More importantly, hopefully you don't want people that are here illegally who are committing violent crimes, harming people and breaking their stuff or stealing it. That's at the top of my list. Those people, get rid of them. I'm all about that. You come here and you harm people, you break their stuff, you steal their stuff, go. You're not what I wanted. But outside of that, what I want is I want people here that are basically making this neighborhood, this city, this country a good place to live, just like my fellow Americans. That's what I want.
It chills access to critical social services by subjecting anyone perceived as an immigrant to be screened by local agencies untrained to verify their status, a definition that now seemingly changes by the day. Let me be as clear as I can.
Okay, she's going to be clear. Let's see what she has to say
about this. When families fear calling the police or the fire department, we are less safe.
Let me explain that for you. Let's assume that I have a neighbor. And my neighbor is, let's say he's a military member. He's a service member. And let's say he has a girlfriend that lives with him. She's a nice person. but she happens to be illegal, right? Okay. So we got a split there. And let's say he's on deployment and she knows she's illegal. She's got to keep low. Okay. But she doesn't commit any crimes. She's not hurting anybody. And let's say that there's a prowler around my house, but we've created a situation where she's afraid to call the police because she doesn't want to get deported, especially while her husband's not even home. Okay? And the scenario, I don't think this is an absurd scenario. I hate absurd hypotheticals. I think this is a reasonable one. Okay? She may not call the police for fear of having the police question her and say, well, can we see your ID, ma'am? Right? So now the prowler around my house makes my house unsafe. Do you see how that works? That is what I don't want. I would rather have somebody here illegally and their only crime is that they didn't get permission to come here or they've overstayed a visa. If that's their only crime, I would rather that and that they're willing to participate in society to make my neighborhood, my city, a little bit safer than to make them not willing to participate and contribute to my neighborhood, my city being a little bit less safe. That's how that works. She is correct.
When people delay medical care out of fear, costs rise for everybody.
She is correct. Now let's remember, she said a moment ago, you have two different situations. You've got the emergency room. We know you're going to treat you, right? But then you've got this service over here. Well, if that service over here says, sorry, we can't deal with your situation because you're not an illegal or you're not a legal immigrant, then they may not get their treatment. So then guess what happens? They delay their treatment and then potentially it festers, it grows worse and worse. And then now they need to go and get emergency treatment. And if you've ever looked at your bill, which you should have, you will know that an emergency room visit is way more expensive. So at the end of the day, you're really not necessarily saving people money because we've exempted places like UF Health and said, yep, you can go ahead and treat them. And you might be treating somebody that could have been treated for cheaper earlier on. The actions have consequences, or you might call it unintended consequences. You have to think of these things. This is, again, not being a liberal bleeding heart. I don't want more money being spent. I don't want any money being spent. In fact, just to clear this up, if there was a bill that said no funding for any hospitals, I would support it. So take that. You're a liberal kind of people.
When shadows are created, that is where danger and disease thrive. This bill does not save money. It multiplies harm.
Potentially. Just saying. Because again, we still don't know. So we have to be careful, right? We're being hypothetical. And ultimately we don't exactly know because we don't know the numbers of people here. We don't know the services that they're consuming. So this is more like in theory, but likely.
Here's what makes our community safer and healthier while saving taxpayer dollars. Our efforts to build trust between people and city government. Our investments over the past 2 years to put more officers on the streets, build more fire stations, and give needed salary raises to our first responders.
You got me on the firefighters. I'm a little sketchy on the police. But Republicans, you guys love the police, right? Just saying.
Our programs to get more people signed up for health insurance and provide care pathways for those who don't have it. Third, this bill hurts our local economy. The chilling effect extends beyond public health and safety. Immigrants continue to contribute to our economy. They pay taxes. They work hard. They invest in our city. They are entrepreneurs. They are raising U.S.-born children. When immigrants stay home, we lose valuable parts of our workforce.
Okay, so I'm kind of sort of sympathetic to this one. Like, my wife is foreign born. She's naturalized. And we are raising a U.S.-born citizen son. Okay? So in a sense, I kind of agree. Like, yes, that does happen. This really feels to me kind of like the let's have diversity for diversity's sake. You know me. I don't do that, right? Like, I just want people to be honest and be meaningfully, make meaningful contributions to society. That's it. So I'm kind of on board. I'm kind of sympathetic, but not entirely, because it feels way too close again to, let's have diversity for diversity's sake. And we're so much better when we have more diversity. I don't do that. Where's that say? We don't do that here.
Local small businesses suffer and sales tax revenues decline. Fourth, the bill invents a problem and offers a false solution to sow fear and division.
Correct. That is correct. We don't know the problem. The bill's author said it. We don't know what the problem is. We don't know where it is. We don't know if the majority of however many of that 120,000 foreign-born citizens here in Jacksonville are illegal and are using, say, UF Health services, right, which are exempt, right, which would mean we're not really solving the problem. So we don't know. That's what we should find out first.
Council members offered no data, no fiscal estimates, and no examples of abuse of city dollars to justify this bill.
She's correct.
And let's be very clear about a false claim that continues to be repeated.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Jacksonville cannot and will not become a sanctuary city. Let me repeat that one more time. Jacksonville cannot and will not ever become a sanctuary city.
Okay. She said will not. Now, cannot is out of her scope, right? Because cannot means like something else prevents it. Will not means, well, we can take it to mean that she is not seeking to make that happen. Hold her accountable. If at some point she comes out and says, oh, we need to do this, we need to offer some sort of sanctuary, or couches it in some other language, pull this clip up and go, Mayor, you said no. We're holding you accountable, right? Right there. I'm all about holding people accountable. Trust me. If the mayor does something I disagree with, I'll hold her accountable, right? We ain't besties.
In 2019, the Florida legislature passed a statewide law banning sanctuary cities.
Sure did.
Jacksonville will always follow state and federal laws as long as those laws are constitutional.
Absolutely.
What we need at this moment is truth, not hysteria. We've seen the disastrous result of words meant to divide and inflame. It needs to stop. You may not always agree with me.
I won't.
But you know I will put my love for our city first, and I will tell you the truth of where I stand. I stand for accountability, not scapegoating. I stand for transparency, not theatrics. And I stand for people, not politics.
Okay. Everybody says that. Just saying. Like, she might actually mean it. I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying, like, every politician says this stuff. Like, let's be honest.
So here is what I will be doing. One amendment to this bill called for a full report on all city funding to nonprofits. That's public record. Therefore, I will direct staff to prepare that report so we can get the facts.
Hold her accountable. Right? Like, make sure that happens. Mayor, where's our report? We need to know. Dig into it. Read it. Determine whether or not it's incomplete. If it's not complete, if it's missing something, send it back. Demand a better one. Absolutely. 100% on that.
But I want to let you know, for anybody who's wondering, that in every contract that we have with anyone, it states very clearly, the owner shall consider the employment by supplier/contractor of unauthorized aliens a violation of Section 274A of the Immigration and Naturalization Act.
Well, that's weird. I was under the impression that we were going to be a sanctuary city, and that we were just, shining a big neon sign that said, "Come to Jacksonville. If you're an illegal immigrant, we love you. We'll give you all kind of extra funding and whatever, blah, blah, blah." But now it seems like it's already built in, and it's like right there. Like, she literally has a document. Hey, go look it up. Find out if she's telling the truth. Right? You could find that. Go look. Say, well, I want to see some of these contracts. Go dig into them. do a public records request, right?
Talks about the violation and a cause for unilateral cancellation of the contract. Federal law.
Okay. So once we get our report, we now have the federal law. Now what you can do is you can analyze it and you can say who's violating it, if anyone. And if they are, you can demand what? If you said cancellation of the contract, please go to the head of the class.
Where immigration law belongs. Okay? We follow those laws. In the end, this veto is a stand for the Constitution, public health and safety, taxpayers and the economy, and our immigrant community that makes up an important part of the beautiful mosaic that is Jacksonville. We stand at a pivotal moment in this city. How we choose to govern will dictate who we will become in the coming days, months, and years.
She's right.
Are we a city that leads with principle or one that legislates from partisanship? Will our laws reflect fairness or be driven by distrust? Will our civic conversation rise to meet the moment with unity or give way to fear and fragmentation? These are important questions that we are answering today. This veto is not just a rejection of a bad bill. It is a declaration of who we are and who we aspire to be. It's also an acknowledgement that people are tired of the culture wars. A recent UNF poll.
Okay, she's going to put out some data. As much as we keep fighting these culture wars, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that, Mayor.
Found that only 2% of our citizens felt this issue rose to the top. They want us to focus on the issues impacting their daily lives here in our local government.
I would agree there.
Like their ability to afford a home. I believe we can be better when we do it together. I really do. So I want to thank that bipartisan group of city council members who voted against this bill the first time. I ask you to stand with us once more. I also want to express my gratitude to Randy White on his last council meeting as president. Even though we have disagreed, and we've disagreed many times, we have always worked together to find common ground, and not one cross word has ever been said between the two of us. He has worked like a statesman, and I appreciate him very much. That's how we've pushed some big rocks across the finish line in this city. Like, hopefully this wonderful.
Okay. So I'm going to cut that off just because, in the interest of time, and she's not really saying anything that's relevant to this particular bill now. She's just kind of like, we work together, blah, 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 and we don't say mean things to each other, which, by the way, whenever people are like, DL, why don't you run for office? That's why. Because no one would ever say that. It'd be like, DL is a pain in the ass and he calls us a retard all the time. So or maybe I do belong. I don't know, but I'm not running. So anyway, I agree with her veto. I don't agree with all of her points. Ultimately, for me, it falls down on, do we have the necessary information to support this bill? The answer is no, we don't. And the only person throughout this whole conversation that I can recall that gave me one data point, one number, was the mayor. She said 120-some thousand residents here in Jacksonville are foreign born. That's it. That's not enough for me to support a bill. And it shouldn't be enough for you either. When a bill comes to you, when I say you, I mean your city council member and you're reading it, you should evaluate it and say, will this do what it says it's going to do? How will this work? What are the pitfalls? What's the data supporting it? And if that information isn't there, go back to the table, revise this bill, either get me the information or put together another bill that will get this information so we can have this conversation later. People like to talk about running government like a business. Do you think if you go to your boss and you said, I got an idea that's going to make us, that's going to really explode our business. And they go, yeah, how? And you're like, we just need to do this thing. Okay. How's it going to improve our business? Well, we're going to have to research that. Okay. But how's it, if you don't know it's going to increase our business, how are you saying it will? Well, there's definitely a problem out there to be solved. Okay, well, how do you know that people are going to respond positively to this and they're going to want to part ways with their money and give it to us to solve this problem? Well, because there's a problem. Okay, well, how big is that problem, that people are dealing with? Well, I don't really know. Okay, what do you know that can convince me if you're talking to your boss, what do you know that can convince me that I should do this thing in order to make us a lot of money? Well, it's a problem, but you can't define the problem. You can't define the scope of it. You can't define how it's going to be solved. You can't define if any exceptions to this problem are really the bulk of the problem, right? In this particular case, we don't know who's using these services. We don't know where they're using these services. We don't even know. We don't know. Is it 1,000 people that are using the services every great once in a while? Do they use it on a regular basis? We don't know. This is not about fifis. It's not about my feelings. It's about the facts. They weren't presented. Let's go to comments. We'll get out of here. All right. I got a comment here on Facebook. Again, as I say, I cannot show these on the screen, so I apologize, but I'll read it as I listen to her. This is from Tony. The mayor speaks of immigrants residing. A little bigger. Okay, so a little bit longer. There we go. The mayor speaks of immigrants residing within our city, and she never distinguishes between legal or illegal, undocumented, unlawful immigrants within our city. We must uphold the laws when a person comes into our country illegally and is not even vetted to determine their past history or intentions of doing so. Okay, so number one, vetting them is not the job of city. It's not a city job. It's the federal government's job, right? And we have to make sure that we keep area of responsibilities separate. But I agree, she is not distinguishing because we don't know. Nobody knows. Neither does the bill's author. Continuing on here, let's see. How long would they be permitted to stay with the mayor, providing shelter, food, clothing, and financial aid for subsistence before JSO is summoned? Don't know because we don't know how many there are, right? So if you're complaining that there's a problem, you should tell me how many there are, where they are. Okay. Legal and illegal aliens are separate categories. They are. The local, state, federal law enforcement system must deal with them accordingly. Yes. And JSO, as I pointed out, does that. They already do. They work with ICE when they see a crime, and then they investigate. And then when they find out that there's an illegal alien, their job is to reach out to ICE and say, hey, we've got somebody for you. Let's see what else we got in the comments here. Louis Blum says, no surprise, her incompetent cabes into all sorts of crap. Shaking my head. Terrible mayor, to say the least. I mean, hey, if you believe she's a terrible mayor, that's fine. I think on this particular issue, she's correct based on the facts, not based on which party she belongs to, not based on, even some of the things that that she said that I disagree with, because I don't agree with everything that she said. Let's see. James says, this is my mayor. She's deep blue, and I'll say she's a groomed rep. She's going to run for Senate again. It was planned. Is that the end of it? Watch and see. She lost her first run and was told to run for mayor. Then after, she'll get a guaranteed win for Senate. Perhaps. And red team does that too. So just pointing that out. Let's see. Time surfing alien. She show has flowery talk. That is true. And I'm not buying it. Right. And, look, when you're a public speaker and you're talking about something like this, to some degree, you're going to have flowery language, in this particular case. And if you're supporting it, if you're supporting the legislation, you're going to have less flowery language, right? Like that's kind of the nature of it. But I agree, she does. Let's see what else. That Liberty Lady, we're going to close on this one. Yeah, they, blue and red, work together to steal our money and our liberties. They absolutely do. And that's how you know I'm a libertarian, because I'm all like, you're bad and you're bad. It's like that meme, right? Kids, you're both terrible. That's the truth. All right, folks, thank you so much. That's my show for today. Hope you understand why the veto is actually a good thing. It's based on facts, not feelings. If you want to know the full details of the bill and walk through it, I do that in episode 520. Go check that out. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube or you follow me on Rumble. You can also follow me on other social media, Liberty Dad on Facebook, Liberty Dad Pod on X. And X is where you're going to find most of my activity. So if you're ever wondering what's going on with me, what I'm up to, go check me out there. But otherwise, I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.